Hello everybody and welcome to Notorious Yu-Gi-Oh! I am Notorious Cly, and today I want to stop and think about the holiday season. I want to think about chill in the air, think about snowflakes gently floating to the ground. There's a certain magic in the air. Maybe even some bullets. That's right, Magical Musketeers are coming to Duel Links, baby! Today's video is on Magical Musketeers, specifically Resonator Magical Musketeers. Resonator Musketeers? We'll figure out a name for it. The newest box Future Circuit is scheduled to come out soon, may even be out by the time this video drops, and I want to show you how I'm going to be using these new cards. Let's start with a brief overview of why I wanted to smash these archetypes together. Resonators struggle a bit going first, because they don't have consistent access to meaningful interaction. Your normal game plan when going first is to sit on a big dude who has to be dealt with in a specific way, or wall up behind a bunch of bodies that don't do anything. Resonators also struggle a little bit with resource management. Your big synchro plays eat up a ton of cards, and there aren't a lot of ways to get those back or replace them. Magical Musketeers help fix both of these problems. All of the Magical Musketeers we are playing are level 4 or lower fiends, which means they are searchable by Demon's Resonance. This means they are accessible at almost any point in the duel. The Musketeers also trade pretty favorably with your opponent's cards. Any spell activated in their column, that can be your spell or your opponent's, generates you advantage. A well-timed Desperado allows you to go plus and potentially stop your opponent in their tracks. One of Magical Musketeers' weak spots is their small attack values. Your Resonator engine is really efficient at pumping out big bodies, which includes Red Nova Dragon. Red Nova Dragon pairs exceptionally well with the Magical Musketeers because it can negate an attack, which means you have a pretty good chance of keeping them on board. Pairing a Magical Musketeer with Red Nova Dragon also creates a really interesting problem for your opponent to solve. Do they deal with a Magical Musketeer that's going to keep generating you advantage and interrupting them? Or do they deal with the big Red Nova Dragon that is all but certain to run over anything they put on board? While we're going through this deck profile, please keep in mind that this is a first draft, not a final build. At the time of recording, the Musketeers are not out yet, and therefore I haven't actually been able to playtest them. This is all just theorycraft. Things are probably going to change as I get a little more familiar with the deck and actually get to run the ranked ladder with it. But for now, this will do. Alright, I think that's enough rambling babbling for me. Let's go card by card. Let's start with Crimson Resonator. This is the best card in any Resonator deck. I don't think that changes here. This is also one of the key cards that allows the archetypes to mash up so well. Because Crimson Resonator can special summon itself, your normal summon is often free, hopefully for a Magical Musketeer. I'm running 3 copies of Crimson for obvious reasons. If you've ever played Resonators, you know how amazing this card is. Next up is Red Resonator. I'm only playing 1 copy in this version, because Red eats your normal summon, and typically you want to save that for your Musketeers. I know you can use Red's effect to special summon a Musketeer from your hand, but typically when you're doing that, it's because you want to make a synchro play. And if the only synchro play you have available to you is Red plus a Magical Musketeer, it's probably not going to be as good as just playing Musketeer control. Just normal summon that Magical Musketeer, use your spells and traps to your advantage. There is a dream scenario where you open a Red Resonator, a Magical Musket to summon off the Red Resonator, and a Wild Wind to special summon, and a spell or trap to proc the Magical Musketeer effect, but I'm not really going to bank on opening a very specific 4-card combo. Another reason why I'm only running 1 red in this build is there's a common scenario that kept coming up in test hands where I would have a Caspar stick on board. Caspar is level 3, and I would want to make a synchro play to attempt to push for game. Caspar being a level 3 means the only way I could do that is to either try and explore the level 5 synchro pool, or to include a level 3 tuner, which would be Creation Resonator. This is a good spot to talk about the Synchron Creation package. I'm only running 1 copy of each because I don't want to see them in my hand ever. I want to be special summoning them from the deck off of Crimson Resonator's effect. And their main purpose is to make Red Nova Dragon. Synchron also has a cool bonus effect. When it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a Resonator from your graveyard back to your hand. Most commonly, this is used to grab another Crimson, or to grab Creation for the follow-up play I talked about with Caspar. Next up is Resonator Call. This is a very easy one to explain. Resonator Call gets you any Resonator from your deck to your hand. This essentially represents 3 extra copies of Crimson. Crimson is your best card. If you could play 3 more copies of your best card, you probably would. Keep in mind, Resonator Call can proc your Magical Musketeer effects, which is a neat bonus. Last card in our Resonator half of the deck is Wandering King Wildwind, the best non-tuner to ever be invented for the Resonators. I don't feel like I really need to explain Wandering King Wildwind. If you're familiar with Resonators, you know what he does. He can special summon himself, he can get you more Resonators for follow-up, he does everything you would ever want in a non-tuner. This is an obvious 3-of. On to the Magical Musketeers. As mentioned earlier, all the Magical Musketeers we're playing are level 4 or lower, which means they're searchable by Demon's Resonance. All the Magical Musketeers have a shared effect, where during either player's turn, you can activate a Magical Musket spell or trap from your hand. And then each Magical Musketeer has its own unique effect when a spell or trap is activated in its column. It does not have to be your spell or trap, it just has to be a spell or trap in their column. Starfire is the best Magical Musketeer that I found, specifically because it's a level 4, which means it lines up perfectly as a non-tuner for your Crimson lines if you were to need it for that. And when a spell or trap is activated in its column, it can special summon a Magical Musketeer from deck, which would be our next target, Caspar. I'm running 3 because I want to see it in my opening hand. I think you could probably get away with 2, but that's something that only testing on the ranked ladder will actually tell me. That brings us to Caspar. This is the only other Magical Musketeer we're playing because its effect is crazy good. When a spell or trap is activated in its column, you can add a Magical Musket from your deck to your hand. This dude lets you add any of your archetypical spells or traps after you've used any spell or trap. You get the perfect interaction when you need it. I'm only playing one of this dude again because it's a level 3, which doesn't line up nice with our normal plays, and it's searchable by skill, and Starfire can special summon it. We should have access to Caspar whenever we want it. Next up are the Magical Musket spells and traps. First up we have Cross Domination. Cross Dom lets you reduce a monster's attack and defense to 0, and negate its effects. Negating effects is always good. Reducing your opponent's monster's attack to 0 is really good for helping your muskets beat over stuff. It's even better when you realize you can crash into it with a Red Nova Dragon. I'm only running 2 copies of this because I want to see it in my opening hand, but I don't want to see multiples of it in my opening hand. Same logic applies for our next card, Desperado. Desperado targets one face-up card on the field and destroys it. It's great for removing problematic monsters, interrupting your opponent at a key combo point, or it's great for removing stuff like Dark Magic Circle. Last up we have Dancing Needle. This card is a triple DD Crow. You can target up to, emphasis on the up to, 3 cards in the graveyard and banish them. When this card is good, it's going to be really, really good. There may come a meta or a time when playing 2 or more of these becomes mandatory, but for right now I think 1 is okay. Next up are the utility cards or techs. I favor quick play spells here because I wanted access to proccing my Magical Musketeer effects. We've got triple MSD, back row removal is great, it's even better when it generates you advantage by proccing your Magical Musketeer effects. The next card we have is Book of Moon. I've considered cutting this card and I think I'm going to. It's not because Book of Moon is bad or anything, I just really want to get the deck size smaller to increase my consistency, and this seems like the easiest cut because I don't think it does as much as the other cards. And next up we have Forbidden Lance. This card in theory is really good for the deck. It can protect your Magical Musketeers from stuff like Book of Moon, and it can do the same thing for Red Nova Dragon, who notably struggles against back row. Also, you can use it to reduce your opponent's attack and let your Magical Musketeer swing over it. I think that's it for the main deck. I suppose we should go over the extra deck really quickly. There's nothing too exciting to see here. It's pretty much a standard Resonators extra deck. We've got 2 Red Rising Dragon, 1 Dark End Dragon, 1 Infinity Doom Dragon, 1 Bane, 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 Red Nova Dragon. Red Rising is the standard combo piece, does everything you want for the deck. Dark End is non-destruction removal, sends to the graveyard, always relevant. Infinity Doom Dragon is a conditional destroy and burn for half attack. The burn damage has cheesed me out a few wins that I shouldn't have gotten otherwise. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane is a 10, which means it's something cool to go into after you've used your level 8 Dark Dragon Synchros effect. It also can get Resonators back from the graveyard and from your deck, and it can tribute off an extra body for a Red Dragon Archfiend monster. That's a Red Dragon Archfiend monster, not just Red Dragon Archfiend, which means it can get Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend is non-targeting destruction removal. Please remember to put your monsters in defense before you use its effects. It is pretty hilarious when you end up destroying everything on your field too. Red Dragon Archfiend is the icon. I really wish this card was still relevant. The defense destruction comes up from time to time, but mostly it's here for skill requirements and to go into Red Nova Dragon. Red Nova Dragon is amazing, can't be destroyed by card effect, gains attack for every tuner in your graveyard, and the effect that has synergy, I guess if you would call it that, with your magical musketeers, is the negating attack. It's kind of cool that if you pair a Red Nova Dragon with a magical musketeer, it can protect it from battle and help keep it on board. Let's take a look over here at the side deck area. You'll see some cards that I thought about playing, but didn't make the initial cut. We've got 3 Cosmic Cyclone. This is interchangeable with MST. I favorite MST because I don't really want to be paying life points if I'm forced to play Musket Control for a turn or two while I wait to get my Resonator engine online. If you only have Cosmic Cyclone, I don't think it's wrong to play it, I just prefer MST. Next up is Forbidden Chalice. This was initially in Book of Moonspot, and then I realized that Forbidden Chalice and Cross Domination are basically the same thing. It could be nice to have Monster Negation not tied to a Magical Musketeer, but for now I think Cross Dom is going to do everything we need Forbidden Chalice to do. Our next card was kind of cool in theory, but after really sitting and thinking about it, I ended up not liking it a whole bunch. World Legacy Clash. World Legacy Clash, in theory, protects your Magical Musketeers or your Red Nova Dragon from targeted effects, in addition to getting it off the field and stopping it from being interacted with. It can reduce the attack of one of your opponent's monsters, which again is good for your little Magical Musketeers. But the thought that made me keep this out of the list was, my opponent wants to remove my Magical Musketeers or my Red Nova Dragon. Why would I do that for them, even if it's just until the end phase? I think Forbidden Lance just does this card's job better. And lastly is a card that you probably won't get as much mileage out of as your other more generic utility cards, but it's probably one of the funnier ones you can play. Concentrating Current is great. When you look at your Magical Musketeers, yes, they do have low attack values, but they got pretty good defensive values. Starfire is 1700 and Caspar is 2000. A 3200 attack Caspar is pretty beefy. That's big enough to get over anything you want. It's exceptionally hilarious too when you consider that all your extra deck monsters have gigantic defense stats. Imagine adding 3000 attack onto Red Nova Dragon. This dude usually sits at 5000, that puts it at 8000, that's enough to OTK and TCG. Alright everybody, and that's the deck. And I'm sure you can tell by now that I'm slowly losing my voice, so I think this is where I'm going to insert the obligatory YouTube like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, be safe, have fun.